Uh, so the ready mix industry, it has a problem, and there are not enough ready mix drivers. But, during this project, a key takeaway that our team learned is that, they are, more than drivers. They are skilled operators. So from this point on, I'm going to use the term concrete delivery professional, or CDP, when I'm talking about, when I'm referring to a ready mix driver, just so we're all on the same page. And so over the next 30 minutes, Liz and I are going to be describing, our solutions, that we feel that are needed to reduce the CDP shortage. It's our version of as the drum rolls. And so all of this work could not have happened without funding from the Concrete Advancement Foundation, and also support from the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. So the concrete industry suffered greatly from the Great Resignation, and there was a bottleneck in the supply when COVID hit. Closure of CDL schools closed down. And also what's happening is that right now in 2021, about a third of, the CDPs that were hired also quit during that year. And that was attributed to or linked to low pay and inconsistent daily schedules were the top reasons why they were quitting. And so right now, there's not enough, the hiring pool is too small. And the consequence is that these concrete producers, even though that business is growing, 70% of the companies have reported lost business due to the CDP shortage. So we decided, we were put together a comprehensive analysis to build transformative recommendations. So first, what we did was we analyzed over 36,000 deliveries, concrete deliveries, to identify opportunities for productivity improvement. Then we also engaged MIT's Center for Transportation and Logistics Freight Lab, where they're looking at the long haul trucking industry, to explore some of the empirical analyses that they've performed for that industry. We also we conducted several interviews where we were interviewing CDPs, operation managers, nonprofits, tech companies, dispatchers, to gain a full understanding of the technology that exists, emerging technology, and to understand the tasks and responsibilities that CDP performs daily. We also constructed a representative case of a concrete plant, or a ready mix plant simulator. And this enabled us to start to test the cost and savings associated with hiring, retaining, and increasing CDP productivity. So when we were looking at this, we created these 3 buckets where where it was looking at recruitment, retention, and productivity. And of course, then one of the something that was very unique about this was that we constructed and deployed a unique national CDP survey that was deployed across the US. So this was a really neat analysis here that kicked everything off. So we were able to get our hands on a data set where we were looking at 36,000 deliveries, to look at the tasks that are performed during each delivery, to see how much time is spent. And so the delivery characteristics was that each delivery, the average number of deliveries that a CDP makes is about 3.1 per day. And the average duration is about 120 minutes per delivery. And so there's a national vacancy rate of 10.9% for the CDP shortage. So the question becomes, well, like what are the frictionless changes for a 10% improvement? So how do we increase daily deliveries from 3.1 a day to 3.5 a day? Or, how do we shorten the delivery duration from 120 minutes to 108 minutes, only 12 minutes? So what we did was we built, to start to understand some of the costs, is that we built this representative case where we started to take in input from the interviews, and we had different model inputs into this simulator, where our plant, we had 50 trucks, but only 45 were operating. We were hiring, 17 CDPs a year. We had a exit rate where 7 CDPs were leaving, and also CDP productivity, the number of loads delivered per week. And there are the direct costs, which are associated with hiring, which are the wages paid during training costs, and HR administrative costs. But there's also then the indirect costs. And the indirect costs are those that occur from the revenue that's lost from idle trucks, those that are sitting in the yard not being utilized. And then the revenue that's lost from reduced CDP productivity. So putting this model together and these variables enabled us to start asking a few questions. So in the beginning, I stated that the recruitment pool is too small. And so, and everyone in the room knows that there are other candidate pools that the industry needs to target. And so the hard part is not determining which groups are missing, but the question becomes, how and is it worth it? And so to answer the latter question, is it worth it? We constructed this analysis. And so what we're doing here is that on the x-axis here at the bottom, you have the average number of hires per year. And here on the y-axis, you have, it's the percentage of net revenue, where we normalized annual hiring costs. And so as expected, if you're expanding your recruitment pool, your direct costs are going to go up. The other thing that's going to happen too is that if you're expanding your recruitment pool to include people who do not have a CDL or ready mix experience, their time to ramp up, their productivity is going to be less, and it's going to take longer for them to become a proficient driver. And so what's happening here is that, looking here at 17 drivers, right now, the direct costs of hiring is about 2.5% of the net revenue per annual net revenue. If you increase the number of hires and you jump from 17 to 19, there's going to be about a 1% increase in the direct costs. But that is completely overshadowed by what's happening here with the line that's decreasing, which is the foregone sales from idle trucks. And so while you are losing money from the inexperience and the productivity, you're still going to have more trucks operating. And so going from 17 to 9, if you're following that line, there's about a 5% reduction. So this is really just, building the case that it is important to expand the candidate pool, and that it makes sense to expand that it's economically viable to do that for those who do not have ready mix experience or a CDL. Another analysis that we performed, we're looking at retention. And so the average number of weeks that a new hire stays, for those who quit in the first year, is about 26 at the 26-week mark period. And so what we did here is that, as each additional week of average retention generates about 1% gain in net revenue. So 0 right here is 26 weeks. And then the number 2 represents 28 weeks. And so if you increase the new hire tenure by 35%, that's providing the same value as doubling the hiring rate, which, if you're quantifying this, it's about $35,000 of value per year. So finally here, one of the things that we've learned in this project is that we're operating in a tight market. And so there's a lot of apprehension about investment in new technology. And so, we're thinking about how to increase productivity and utilization. And so here you're seeing this baseline case. And so where we're operating at 17 hires, and this box right here, it represents 50% of the data where most of the values are concentrated. And so each revenue gain, so get 1% gain in productivity yields about a 1% increase in net revenue. And so a plant could invest more than 5% of its expected annual net revenue in new technology for every 1% gain in productivity, and still comes ahead. And so each revenue gain, we discounted each year, 8 in this case, and then summed that up to get the present value. So one of the, this was one of my favorite parts here, was building the survey. Building the survey was, so now that we've built the model, and we're asking ourselves this question, now we need to learn from the CDPs, how do you how do you feel about your job? What are the things that you love, and why? And what are the things that you dislike about your job? And how would your feelings or your satisfaction change if this happened? So we created this survey, and then we deployed this across the U.S., and we got over almost 440 responses for those who fully completed the survey. So the question was, asking them to select 5 things that contribute the most dissatisfaction to your job. And so there were 3 categories that emerged. There was the CDP schedule, which is linked to the break times being inadequate and the inconsistent scheduling. There was management, as driver performance going unrecognized, the responsiveness of management, and cameras monitoring activity. And then finally, the physical job requirements, assembling the chutes. And so that gave us a place to start to think about where there are opportunities to improve satisfaction using technology, transformative technology. So, for example, the question then was, well, how would your satisfaction, how would it increase if you had more control over your scheduling? And so here you can see that for those who selected scheduling as being something that contributes, their top 5, they're saying that their satisfaction would significantly improve if significantly increase if they had more control. And these different colors, what they mean here, over here in this legend, is that it's the tenure, how long they have been a CDP. And so this is telling you that it does not matter. A way to interpret this is that it does not matter how long that they've been there. Those that had been there for 6 months or 10 years, they all would have that they would like to have more control over their schedule. Another question that we asked was for all of those who were answering the survey was, what are the most challenging first year CDP tasks? And we want to increase retention and keep the new hires to stay on board. And so here there were several options. And so there were a couple of categories that emerged. There's the first year CDPs, it's the concrete delivery operating skills, driving off road and placing concrete for more challenging pours. And the second category is concrete knowledge and communication. It's learning the properties of concrete and dealing with the contractors on the job site. And so putting this here, knowing what we know now, we can begin to consider alternative solutions that address these issues. And so, for the greatest dissatisfaction, there's scheduling, there's management, there's the physical requirements. And then there are those for the challenges for the first year CDPs. There's the learning the properties of concrete and the off-road driving. And so it was the next step was to bring stakeholders into the room, and we held a workshop, and the workshop highlighted the need for new solutions, but it was now taking a comprehensive look at the problem and developing robust, meaningful solutions. And so out of this, it was the industry must collaborate on creating long-term solutions, and that we absolutely needing technology to play a stronger role in helping with productivity, recruitment, and retention, and also changing the perception of having a limited career pathway. So putting all of this together then leads us into our recommendations, where now Liz is going to take over.
Thank you so much, Beth, for sharing these methods and results. I'm super excited to share some of our team's recommendations based on these findings. The cost and productivity analysis that Beth explained shows us the value of recruitment, retention, and productivity. The survey and the workshop provides us clues on some of the best solutions. So our synthesis of these leads us to the following recommendations. As Beth explained at the beginning of the presentation, we've identified 3 major challenges facing the ready-mixed industry: recruitment, retention, and productivity. On the next few slides, I'll discuss some potential solutions for addressing these challenges that fall into the 6 categories that are shown here in these boxes. It's important to note that there are various systems manufacturers and solutions on the market that can help enable these recommendations. Next slide, please. Let's start with recruitment. In order to recruit more CDPs, the first step is increasing the candidate pool. We can focus on developing a standardized set of skills for the CDP to demonstrate that this position involves specialized or technical knowledge. This would help in recruiting foreign workers by fitting the criteria of a technical role that is required for an H-1B visa. The standardized skills would also help to develop modular curricula that would allow some workers, such as other types of CDL drivers, to be trained without going through the full training. Finally, the skills list would also help to identify the skills that are common with other roles, and we could target those groups for hiring. Next, we could expand access to younger workers through developing new roles, such as a concrete delivery technician position, or an internship program through partnership with the concrete construction community. For example, a concrete delivery technician could learn about the properties of concrete and provide customer service while the CDP is responsible for driving. The goal of creating this position would be to support the CDP and eventually move into a CDP role, creating a career pathway for younger workers or workers without ready-mix experience. We used the cost simulation tool that was mentioned earlier to evaluate the economic feasibility of employing concrete delivery technicians to support new hires at selected job sites. We found that if the introduction of the technician role increases training and ramp-up speed, while also increasing the average retention time of CDPs, this would result in cost savings. To recruit more women to the CDP role, we can learn from groups such as Women in Trucking on ways to improve the work-life balance and can identify opportunities to reduce the physical burden of the job with automation and other technologies. Reducing the physical nature of the job would also help with retaining the more senior CDPs for longer. Finally, we've learned from companies that developing a flexible part-time solution has been successful, such as recruiting firefighters, teachers, and even airport bus drivers. Other groups that we could tap into include veterans and those that have been previously incarcerated. In addition to broadening the talent pool, we've overall found that it would be helpful to change the perception of the job. We know that NRMCA has changed the position title to concrete delivery professional instead of concrete mixer driver. However, this is a change that all companies should take to help promote the highly skilled nature of this job. Companies can change it in their job postings and in their general marketing. Finally, to improve some of the job tasks that CDPs dislike the most, more technology could be adopted to help with rote tasks such as washing the trucks or maneuvering the chutes. Next slide, please. We've heard from many companies that retaining CDPs is an even greater challenge. Through our interviews and survey, we found that it is vital to reduce first-year challenges since many drivers leave after a short period of time, typically less than a year. We believe it's important to continue to promote standardized, high-quality training. For example, the NRMCA has CDP training courses that can greatly benefit all ready-mix companies. To be most effective, this training should emphasize training in tasks that first-year drivers find to be the most difficult, such as understanding concrete properties or placing the concrete to help them be more confident and effective earlier on in the job. We also would recommend improving the learning outcomes from training by tapping into more hands-on training modules like virtual reality training. There's a star next to this because we consider this to be more of a longer-term solution. Virtual reality technologies can help simulate driving scenarios to improve safety, help drivers experiencing challenging driving and placement scenarios, and learning about the properties of concrete in a hands-on manner. We've also learned that gamification of learning outcomes is an effective way for many companies and can improve the intrinsic motivation of CDPs. To retain more CDPs, we can enhance career-long engagement with CDPs. Our survey results showed that CDPs would like to be more involved in scheduling, which would improve their job satisfaction. To do this, schedule bidding systems that allow CDPs to have more autonomy in their schedule can be a strategy to deploy. Research shows that schedule bidding is effective in other industries like ride sharing and even nursing. More flexible scheduling has also been helpful in retaining more senior employees for longer, helping to retain their institutional knowledge. We can also increase driver management engagement and strengthen driver recognition through automated, data-driven CDP feedback, where CDPs are rewarded and given incentives based on performance. Data can also be used to identify predictors of CDP stress to help aid in identifying those that are likely to quit so that companies can intervene before it's too late. Last but not least, I'm sure when all of you have applied for jobs, you've wanted to understand the career pathway potential. This is important for CDPs too, especially younger workers. Helping to structure training to enable development for other concrete careers is critical in retaining workers that want to stay in the industry and move up the ladder, as many CDPs indicated in our survey. Next slide, please. We know technology and data can help with recruitment and retainment, but it is also useful in improving CDP productivity. Our analysis of about 36,000 deliveries found that on average, a CDP takes 120 minutes to deliver a load of concrete. Reducing this time by only 12 minutes would significantly boost productivity and nearly alleviate the shortage issue. This gain in productivity would enable each CDP to deliver an average of 10% more loads of concrete per day. There are significant opportunities to achieve this level of productivity, such as increasing the use of automation for non-value added tasks like truck washing. Some vendors have suggested that an automated truck washer, as an example, could reduce batch-to-batch cycle time by 10 minutes. This 9% increase in productivity would provide a positive return on investment as long as that investment was less than 50% of the annual expected net revenue. Another more long-term strategy is to use augmented reality technology to improve efficiencies for CDPs by allowing them to practice different scenarios and get real-time feedback. Finally, evaluation of data can also help to manage customer demand and shape the demand curve. We can use data to develop machine learning models that predict customer demand and CDP supply based on patterns over time. Then, surge pricing could be applied, such as the surge pricing that's used in ride sharing. Higher prices could be charged for more unfavorable shift times like early mornings, holidays, or weekends to incentivize drivers to take these shifts. Paired with a bidding app, this could allow for CDPs to choose shifts based on their time and wage preferences. Next slide, please. Today, we've discussed some short and long-term solutions based on our findings from interviews, literature review, the nationwide survey, and simulation models. We do believe there are opportunities for additional research and outreach in this area to improve the CDP shortage. While we've proposed some new solutions like a bidding app, it would be useful to develop a proof of concept model to assess how this app would perform in a ready-mix company setting. We also believe case study analysis and dissemination of those case studies across the industry could help demonstrate the effectiveness of emerging technologies like VR, AR, and gamification. One of the biggest gaps that has made assessing the challenge more difficult is the lack of data on CDPs. Unlike other jobs that have years of data collection in the Bureau of Labor Statistics databases, CDP data are more scarce. We therefore think it would be useful to develop a CDP data hub that would allow for more in-depth analysis. Beth presented on the simulation model of a CDP operation that helped us to better understand the value of investing in several possible solutions. But all of these strategies require either upfront investments or changes to operations. This model allows us to understand the value of making these changes. We believe further development of this model could allow for the creation of a common platform to test the effects of new strategies on cost and productivity for operations of different sizes and locations. Understanding the value of solutions is important for the industry and will require the industry working together. We would be happy to continue to support this type of effort and work with all of you on this analysis. We are also doing our best to raise the awareness of the CDP shortage and the benefits of this skilled occupation through engaging with media outlets and working on op-eds with our communications director, Andrew. Last but not least, we think it would be helpful to keep the momentum moving from this research and engagement with the industry by increasing the opportunities for CDP workforce communications. We thoroughly enjoyed the workshop at MIT this past spring and would love to continue to host an annual innovation meeting to provide updates on workforce research and invite leading experts and industry speakers to share insights and emerging solutions. We also believe it would be helpful to develop a webinar series of experts and industry leaders to share potential strategies and keep the conversation moving forward. despite the CDP workforce challenges facing the industry. We believe the short and long-term strategies discussed today can aid in recruiting more talent to the industry, retaining the current skilled CDPs, and improving the productivity and efficiency of operations. Thank you once again to the Concrete Advancement Foundation and the NRMCA for making this special project possible. We appreciate your time and look forward to any questions or thoughts that you have to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you, to Beth and Liz for that talk. I just want to remind everyone that if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A. We have had a couple that have kind of come through. One of which is, Liz, you mentioned that one of the possible new technologies that could affect the driver is augmented reality. I was just wondering, could you explain a little bit about kind of what we mean there and how that, how would that affect the driver? Why do we think that would have an impact here?
Absolutely. In our workshop, we had a speaker from MIT, his name is Dr. John Liu, come and explain some of the benefits of augmented reality across industries, particularly in manufacturing. And what he explained is that this type of technology could really be useful in training as well as on-the-job activities. So what this might look like is some of those fancy glasses that you might think of in some of these newer movies, or I don't know what kind of movies, but some fancy glasses that while you're participating in your job or driving, you might have real-time feedback of what you're doing. So for example, in manufacturing, while someone might be working on a manufacturing line, they'll have these glasses that are in the corner of their eye. They're able to see instructions and feedback that might suggest that they're on the right path or they might be making a mistake. And this type of technology could also be used in the ready mix arena with CDPs when they're on the road driving. It could be potentially used in on the job when they're placing the concrete to help with that first year challenge, as we've suggested earlier. I would be happy to share any other information about this type of technology and how it's been useful in other industries, and also share information from Dr. John Liu on some of the cost benefits of this technology as well.
Excellent. Another question that we had was raising the salary of the CDP explored as part of the survey as a means to attract or retain drivers.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was trying to unmute myself there. So when we were looking at yes, we did. What we did was when we were conducting the interviews, we did use an average for the CDP hourly rate. When we were testing different scenarios, we did not explore what happens to retention if you increase the salary of an experienced CDP. What we did do, we had a salary for, we had a scale so that we had wages for an experienced CDP. We had wages for a new hire. And then we also, Liz was talking about a concrete delivery technician. And just to help, talk about that again, the concrete delivery technician, the purpose of this role is someone to support a new hire on some jobs. Not all jobs would need a concrete delivery technician, maybe some that are more complicated. Where we had a concrete delivery technician and where it would be economically feasible. So we did not explore the, different scenarios for an experienced CDP's hourly wages. We were looking at different types of hires.
I will say that we did learn early on in the interviews that some companies do reward CDPs that through higher wages or higher hourly wages. So I know we learned that companies for folks that even show, kind of had a perfect attendance, they would receive several dollars higher hourly wage compared to other drivers. And what we learned from the companies was that that was super successful in helping to retain some of those employees, because they felt that they were seen and being rewarded for doing a job well done, and also helped the companies to be a little bit more competitive than some of the other companies in their surrounding area.
Yeah, and I think I would just sort of add to that as we were framing the study. There was a sense that most firms do consider, salary as a way to attract new workers, and others have studied that before. And so, sort of the charge for us was to identify what are the other aspects of the job that would change the perception, and therefore change the attractiveness of the position. But that is a great question. Folks, feel free to continue to add questions. Another question that did come in, Liz, you mentioned that data could play an important role here. And obviously the data landscape has changed a lot, but similar to the earlier question about augmented reality, like, can you help maybe connect the dots a little bit? How could data help with the challenge around a bit, increasing the supply of CDPs?
That is a great question. I know all of you have probably heard that we have a lot of big data that we collect now, and that's true in many, many industries, but it's also true in this industry. There's more technology that enables us to have real-time data of what's happening throughout the concrete delivery process. And so what we've started to do is take a look at some of these large data sets of thousands of rows of concrete data to understand what is going on in an operation. Are there opportunities here that we can see to improve the efficiency in the operations? And so from the data set that we looked at for the productivity analysis that was mentioned earlier, there were about 36,000 rows of data. And we were able to use that to ask the questions of, are there drivers that are doing better than others in some areas? Are there CDPs that we see that fall outside of some of these averages? And can we dive in a little bit further to understand what these patterns are and why they're happening? And so we gave the example of using maybe an automated washer. And that's because when we took a look at the data, we did see that there was large variation in the washing time of trucks, which suggests that there are drivers that's happening a little bit faster for versus others that it's taking a little bit more time. We also saw variation in the time to drive out to the plant and coming back between drivers when we normalized some of the data, and found that there might be opportunities to use traffic data or just some real-time technology that might help to improve the direction even, or the path that the driver's going, to help speed up that time if there's an accident or some weather related incident. So having these large data sets allows us to just really identify these patterns and ask questions of what might be different here. How can we improve these operations through looking at some of our best-in-class CDPs and ensuring that more of the CDPs become like that best-in-class CDP to make the operation as smooth as possible. And so we're hoping to work actually with more and more companies to collect larger data sets so that we can identify some of these trends, not just for companies in a single location or of a certain size, but look at some of these trends across companies of all different sizes across the US to see what patterns are formed and how we can really make some recommendations on improving that productivity based on that data.
Right,
Hopefully that's helpful.
So maybe that last phrase kind of summarizes it to some degree, which is that right now, the kind of data that's being collected may not increase the supply of drivers, but allows us maybe to get more out of each driver, therefore kind of alleviating that stress. I think there's another aspect though, right, which is that even though the current data doesn't shed light into this, there's a really interesting idea that has come out of the long haul, or actually, sorry, short haul, other types of deliveries, which is if you compare current data sets with things about driver sentiment, we might be able to anticipate which drivers are more likely to leave that profession and therefore to intervene before that happens as a way to kind of extend the population. So there's that would be a stretch, but we would need to augment that current data set. We did have another question come in, which is about the idea of creating a bid for driver assignments, and there's a big difference in ready mix than ride sharing, which is that it's the product's not ordered on demand, and pricing is usually fixed in advance with a project like a long-term contract about a project or a long-term agreement. How are there ways that those kind of things could be overcome? Have we thought about that some? I don't know if who wants to take that, Beth or Liz? How could one imagine mapping that bid for schedule into the ready mix environment?
Liz, do you want to take that? You've spent a little bit more time looking at the bid for schedule.
Sure. So I will say that yes, the ready mix industry is very different than your ride sharing, but we've also seen success in other industries like the nursing industry, where there isn't as much of these kind of longer term schedules. The nursing apps are, I think, a great example for us because we've seen, well, one, they also have a huge shortage and it's been very successful in helping to retain some of their workers. But I think we also have seen with this app that there's a way to incentivize using some surge pricing methodology, a way to, trying to think through this.
I think what you're maybe getting after is sort of shaping the supply availability, right? So in other words, if the price, in this case, the salary, maybe for a particular load is different for different times of day, then that would incentivize the availability to kind of move around within that. Is that sort of maybe what you were getting after with the price surge?
Absolutely. And I think we see that in some of the nursing scenarios where, maybe it's not kind of time of day for them, but maybe it's more of the locations that they're willing to travel, for example, and there's higher rates for those nurses that are willing to travel farther, and they found that to be super successful. And I think that a similar system could be trialed here as well. And although we haven't tried this yet in this industry, I think that as we mentioned earlier, there's an opportunity to develop a proof of concept model to test and see if this will be economically viable, if it's something that we should pilot at different companies to try.
Oh, and one thing to add, it's not only giving the CDP more control, but also the producer. There could be features where there are attributes of the different types of jobs. And so if you recall, when we were talking about first year challenges, new hires, one of the greatest challenges, placing concrete for more challenging pours and dealing with the contractors. So, when thinking about, well, how do I, reduce their stress and increase retention, putting in constraints saying, this person is going to this job with this contractor, though there's some flexibility that then has these, external benefits, or these benefits that are, leading to retention, and helping reduce the frustration.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And maybe it's not just timing, but also attributes of the job. And the only thing, one piece I would like to add, in response to that question too, that may not have come out from the way we sort of talk about it as a benefit on shaping the availability or the scheduling for the driver. But I think there's an equally interesting side of this, which is that the same set of data that you might use to shape that supply side could also be used to provide incentives to customers around timing, right? So in other words, you may incentivize customers to take delivery at different times that aligned better with the supply of the driver. So again, I want to also kind of reflect the fact that the question also, this is a challenging thing to do. I don't think anyone is suggesting that this would be an easy thing to do, but it is highlighted as one of the biggest challenges. We had another question or sort of comment come in, which maybe to help differentiate a little bit between augmented reality and virtual reality, sort of what the differences are, and maybe how they might play different roles from the driver's perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the way that I think about it, I think about the augmented reality being a tool that is used on the job, and that helps with the daily tasks. And then the virtual reality, how we have framed it, or where we see its role, is helping the person prepare for the job, to train for the job. So right now there is a VR simulation where a person steps into this room and sits in a chair, and then there's a screen, and it feels like you are driving a ready-mix truck, and you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden, there's an accident and you roll over. And the whole point of that is that it's supposed to be a wake-up call. And you're operating this massive truck, and so right now that's an application and how virtual reality is being used. So that's how I differentiate between the two, is that virtual reality can be a training tool, and the augmented reality is something that can be used on the job to improve productivity. One of the neat things, Liz brought it up, that Dr. Liu presented at the workshop, was that a person, to demonstrate the benefits, the person put on these goggles and was assembling these parts and components. When the person did it on their own, it took an hour. And then the person put on the goggles, and what they're able to see is, what to do, and following those instructions, there was a 30% reduction in time. And so you had these micro actions that were removed and the sequencing changed. And so that's the difference between the two, or at least that's how I've,
right. So
best way
VR
to think about it. Yeah.
So VR that most people are familiar with is more, isolates you from the world. So therefore it
Right.
would only be appropriate for training. I do want to point out that the question here that came from Scott, thank you, about this, points out that AR could also play a role in data collection. Maybe that isn't formally the AR functionality, but the hardware that would provide the AR could also be an important tool in data collection, which I think is a really interesting point. I'm gonna, so just, noticing the time, I think we have kind of one last question that has sort of popped up, which is, the hub is generally focused, or most of its work is focused around sustainability. And are there relationships between the how we might improve the worker role, or how we might improve the way that this work gets done, and sustainability? If you guys want to field that one.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sitting on that. Is anything coming to your mind immediately, or right away, Randy or Liz?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I agree, right? The hub, we are typically focused very much on sustainability work, but I see this as an extension of some of that sustainability work, because when you think about taking some of that data that I mentioned previously and improving the operations by improving your driver's ability to do their job, you're also going to improve the sustainability of your operations. So for example, if you are, reducing the amount of driving time or some of the idle time that truck is sitting, then that's going to reduce some of the emissions from that truck. So I think that there's many ways to think about how you're improving the operations through improving the CDP's role can also be connected to helping to reduce some of the environmental impacts from that job through efficiency improvements.
Yeah, and I think the other point that I would add to that is that as we see the concrete firms as being key to delivering products with lower environmental impact, I think one of the key things that's going to emerge there is a much more diverse set of concrete mixtures that are being delivered, that are being placed. That's going to in turn lead to differences in the properties of those materials in placement. And we saw, one of that represents one of the key challenges for drivers is dealing with placements and dealing with concrete properties. So it feels to me, as we pursue new mixtures, more sustainable mixtures, these burdens are only going to increase. We're more reliant on the driver to deliver and place that high quality product. And so it's important that we sort of get to addressing these challenges now, whether it's through automation, whether it's through augmented reality, whether it's through better data tools, so that we're able to keep delivering at that same level of quality. So I think we're just about at time. I'm going to maybe hand it back over to Andrew to sort of wrap things up and let you know about future webinars coming up. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for attending. I wanted to mention some upcoming webinars you might be interested to put on your docket. I'm going to advertise details for these on email and via social media too. So on October 26th at 11 a.m., we're going to do a presentation on assessing trade-offs for embodied and operational carbon in designing equivalent buildings with various structural materials. Okay, so the next month on November 9th, at the same time, we're going to do one on engineering and fabricating optimized concrete structures. And then the last one, December 6th at 11 a.m., you'll get to hear a little bit about a tool we've been developing for the life cycle assessment of pavements. So anyway, thank you so much. I'll be distributing the recording for this, and have a great day.